we are live here tonight, and I am trying to send a message right quick to Caleb about sharing my Facebook post. So tonight, folks, there is a lot in the news, and it is like local activity. And this local activity actually happens to be national right now. So I've chosen to basically take a national topic and tie it to our local dilemma. As you can see on our screen, this is the Star News Facebook site. And yesterday, Charles broke a story about a house fire that was evidently an arson. It was set by arson, and the person turns out to be a transgender. Basically, this is going to be a male to female. And so, let's see. I think I actually... Did they finally unfreeze over there, y'all? I was wondering if they were frozen forever. They changed it? Okay. So let's see. I'm going to have to look for here's the actual person. And this is Charles's Facebook. This was going on yesterday live here in Martinsville, Henry County. It went out on their Facebook feed. So I believe he had a couple of thousand individuals that were looking at it on Facebook. And so let's just go to the website for this individual. I'll go through some of this, see if he goes to the website on his own. I know he does. Okay. So now the other was the mugshot. This is the Facebook for the individual. I don't know the person's name before. I just know that the name now is Simone, and I don't know how to pronounce the last name. And so this is basically what you have. Now, what I want to discuss tonight is the fact that this is going on in Arkansas as well. The Arkansas governor, he is in a fight with his own legislators, and so he vetoed a bill that the legislature had put forward, and it ends up being the case that the legislature wants to deny transgender health care for minors. So, as I say, the governor vetoed that, and then the legislature came back, and with I believe 3/4 is what they have to have to overturn a veto, and they overturned that veto. So it's in national news right now that Arkansas is one of the first states to choose to ban gender-affirming health care for minors. Now, you may not realize that this is a big deal, that this is a major issue, and we're going to talk about it tonight because you need to know. Same time, as this is going on, and what I'm trying to do is paint a picture here. Things, they are changing, folks. Virginia legislative body, 16th state to legalize recreational pot. What is it supposed to be? July, I think, is what I understood as I came in to the studio tonight. So that basically means that in July, under Virginia's new laws, adults 21 and over can possess an ounce or less of marijuana beginning July 1st, rather than January 1st, 2024. Now, I have no idea, really, my first thought when I see that is the governor is thinking about all these people that are going to be shut in, that continue to be shut in. And, there's a lot of debate on the effects of marijuana. Like, does it slow individuals down? Does it make people amiable? Things of that nature. And, I'm not a person who is in the medical, and I don't think the medical people give us real information anyway. I am an individual who grew up in the 70s, and so marijuana did not make me amiable, easy to get along with at all. It made me a paranoid individual that basically thought the police were coming in anytime. And so, like I say, I have no idea what it does to other people. It may slow them down, soothe them. Thank you very much. And so, but these are the things that are going on in our nation. And in order to be able to be in the public conversation, you can't just be getting into a discussion at the water fountain. Let me hydrate right quick. If you're not ready for the discussion, you don't have your information in hand, then generally what's going to happen is you're not going to do a good job and you're going to be upset with yourself as well. Now, when we start talking about it from a biblical standpoint, it's really, let's just say, I'm going to use Matthew 15. The basic argument that you need to know if you are at the water fountain and you're an individual who is going to go from a Bible standpoint, it'd be Matthew chapter 15, verse, let's just get the context. Matthew 15:16. And Jesus said, "Are you also without understanding? Do you understand that whatsoever enter into the mouth goeth into the belly and is cast out in the draught? But those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and they defile the man." All right, so are we watching this? Are we paying attention here? The things that end up being in your heart, okay? We're talking about your mind. For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man. But to eat with unwashen hands defileth not a man. So you can tell what's going on here. It's about his disciples not doing their traditional cleansing. And basically Jesus is moving past that and getting at a principle here. And while we're talking about that principle, you just covered marijuana, alcohol, drugs, different, even prescription drugs that are being used wrong. These are all being discussed right here, because what a person wants to do, you know, when you're trying to make an argument against alcohol, for instance, and you're talking about individuals being drunk or not drunk, listen, one of the best arguments, in my opinion, is the fact that the things that defile you are happening in your mind. And we all know, everybody knows, that people drink in order to loosen up. I mean, how do you get a time frame of day called happy hour and not be able to realize that you're loosening your inhibitions? You're inhibited. You have a personality, let's say, that you are paying close attention to yourself. You don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to say something that embarrasses you or whatever. And so you're having a problem being comfortable. And so what do? Happy hour comes along and persons have a drink or two. And the next thing you know, you're able to talk and laugh. Some people are not. Some people are. This is just generalities here we're talking about. Some individuals go so far as to meet a woman that's not their wife. You're in a bar or wherever you are for happy hour, and somebody comes in that you've never met before. Let's just say you're a traveler, and you're at your airport or your hotel beside an airport, and somebody comes in. You're at the bar, you're at happy hour, they're at happy hour, and you hit it off and start talking, and you never know what kind of person the other person is going to be. And if you're in that bar at the hotel, both of you have a hotel room, and how quick can an individual get in a hotel bedroom who has been drinking with somebody that they just met? They don't expect to meet them again, and pretty much if you these are individual things that people think about. Nobody wants to catch any kind of disease. And so if you can figure out, the pharmaceutical companies already helped you with pregnancy. I mean, we're done with that, are we not? So they've got the pharmaceuticals that, so that persons who are drinking or whatever, that they can make sure that nobody has a baby, or if you do have a baby, the laws have been changed so that you can kill the baby. So pretty much all the inhibitors, the things that people used to pay attention to and be scared of, those are being whittled away. And so really, what else do you have? Well, here is that's why we're saying, here is your biblical argument. Out of the heart, and if the heart, out of the heart proceed evil thoughts. If your thoughts aren't being monitored because you're inebriated, then you know you're in danger. Now, that's going to be my argument having to do with marijuana, is individuals are going to be in a state where they're not having their faculties. You need your faculties. Now, why do you think God put us in this system that we're in, our bodies with a conscience? You know, I listened to a psychologist the other day. I believe he's a psychologist, psychiatrist. And somebody's going to have to help me with his name. Caleb and Ian are watching this dude all the time, and I've got way too much stuff on my mind. Jordan Peterson. And Jordan Peterson, you know, he's had a series where he realized he was addicted. I don't remember what he ended up being addicted to, but this dude is super famous. I mean, he went off the charts, and the reason he was off the charts is because of a situation having to do with gender identification. And that's one of the things we're talking about tonight. Jordan Peterson is a Canadian, and he gets into it with the faculty at the university where he was teaching, and it was supposedly that he would not respect the gender identity that some of his students were claiming, and that he refused to do this or that. Well, he takes all the academia on, and then he becomes a very famous individual all over YouTube, huge amounts of followers, and so it ends up being that he gets addicted. His wife is very sick. I don't know the whole story, but I do know that I heard him the other day on one of his YouTube videos, and he actually talked about not really knowing what to do with Jesus Christ. And one of the things that he keyed in on was conscience. The idea that we have a conscience and we don't really ask for it. We just came programmed with it. It'll bug you when you do things that you have determined somewhere along the line, or somebody else helped you to determine that something is wrong. When you cross that, then that entity that he couldn't explain, and it makes him hard to completely deny God, a creator, when he just doesn't know what to make of a conscience. And so that gives a lot of individuals trouble. And so what we're talking about right here is we're talking about having a conscience and then imbibing something that won't allow your conscience to work correctly. Now, let me just tell you this, folks. There's a lot of people's conscience that don't work correctly anyway without marijuana and without alcohol. And it's because their conscience wasn't really informed. Like, for instance, your parents, individuals' parents put stuff on them, like they tell you certain things that are wrong. And the only reason they do it is because they're trying to get you not to do it, not to do something. And so, my parents, no, I'm not going to say my parents. I really don't remember where this came from. It could have been grandparents. It could have been any number of relatives. But I remember it being a popular saying that if you played with matches, you'd wet the bed. Well, you see what we're doing here? They're basically telling you something that isn't true to get you not to do something that they don't want you to be doing. You see how that works? They're building in you a fear or some kind of preventative, and so you can take that and just move it along on all kinds of different subjects where parents tell young people things that are not true, and they're doing this in order to create a warning system, actually a conscious awareness of a lots of things. You know that's not true. you don't need to play with matches anyway. But still, it's not true that you'll wet the bed. And so there's just, and I'm not going to discuss the ramifications of that. We're just saying, you see how a conscience can be, it can be taught, and it's taught wrong. It maybe kept you from playing with matches, I don't know, but that just isn't true. And there are lots of things that parents have been taught themselves by their preachers that are not true, and they pass them on. So here's what we're saying. The conscience is a very, very important part of your makeup. And so here we are, and we're now legalizing. Do you think the government is thinking about the ramifications associated with this, as far as the unconscious behavior that people will be involved in more than they were? And some individuals mix marijuana and alcohol. And so what do you think the government's thinking about? Listen, to me, y'all, our government is not thinking about anything but money. And you know they're going to tax it. So it's basically a way to bring in revenue. They're giving away money right and left. We just got our I call it a subsidy check, is what it ends up being, and our last stimulus. And so they're printing money, giving away money, hand over fist, talking about giving away more. And so how do you fix that, or how do you pay it back? Well, you generate revenue right here. Tax this. You got a whole crowd of individuals from the 60s forward that have been smoking marijuana at least that long. And I don't know if old people keep it up or not. I have no clue, but I'm just saying, see how this goes. So here's where we are. We're basically saying, now, I was saying the business about inhibited. Individuals are very, very determined to try to remove their inhibitions, and so that's where our subject comes in tonight regarding the transgender. Now, why would a person want to change from being a man to being a woman? Well, I also have a very, I'd say, popular book, and one of the reasons I believe that it's popular is because one of the #1 coaches, and if you didn't know that this was a thing, then I'm just going to get this screen up big because I have no idea what would come up on the side of this guy. This is actually a girl that has made the trans change over several years. His name is Chase, and he is apologizing for being interviewed in this book. Now, I don't think you can get this book right now. It's called Irreversible Damage, The Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters. And I don't know how to pronounce the author's name. I know how to pronounce Abigail, but it's Abigail, S-H-R-I-E-R, Shear, Abigail Shear. And he probably says it. He's apologizing for being in this book. Now, the book was published last year, and I believe he was interviewed in September or October. He did not know, in his words, how transphobic she is, and that's what he's saying. He just said, he wants followers on his YouTube. Dude has a lot of followers. 160,000 individuals are constantly subscribed to his YouTube. He's had 10 million views plus. And what he does is he coaches individuals in their transgender journey. And like I say, he is a girl, and he changed over, took the different steps in order to look like a guy. And I'll just let you hear a little bit of his voice.
Anything, so I felt like this was probably just another routine one. Oh boy, was I wrong. Unfortunately, the author contacted me under false pretenses, made me think that I was going to be interviewed for a book on teens with gender dysphoria and how some of them felt like my videos had helped them, and then the interview went really great, honestly. It was about my life and how I grew up and my coming out story and why I think...
Okay. Now, I don't think that she really did what he said. This guy is wanting attention, and she was talking about the hardships that individuals go through. And so in her chapter where she talks about him, about Chase, school system, and that's one of the reasons the Facebook here, the Star News Facebook has the California school systems or school systems. School systems basically have been trying to deal with bullying. And one of the ways that they have tried to deal with bullying is they have made parents make their children go through gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. I take that back. The legislature has exempted you from making your children go through gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. But they also say that it is essential to prevent discrimination, harassment, and bullying. And so they have worked another way around. Like, you don't have to go through sex education. You don't have to have your children go through sex education. But you do have to have your children understand why bullying and things of that nature is not okay. And the persons that are being bullied, they end up putting in that they're the transgenders, the LGBTQT. And so what you're actually doing at an early age, kindergarten, is you're getting kids used to another world, really, is what it amounts to. And so I've only been introduced to this book last week, and then all of a sudden we end up having this event happen in Martinsville involving this very thing. You have an individual. Now, here's the thing, y'all. Do you realize what we're doing to our society? That's what I'm really trying to get to. As we continue to let individuals have their freedoms, now, you basically can't say a lot of things about a lot of things. That's what's on the other side right now, the cancel culture. And it's really not a cancel culture. It's just simply activism on both sides. Everybody is trying to get control. One of the ways that you get control is you shut down free speech. Everybody's doing it. And so what we're doing, though, is we're whittling away our rights in the name of giving away freedom. Now, let's just go back in time just a little bit. You have individuals as you go along. I'm going to tie this to a 1969 legislative move in California that basically did away with divorce for any reason. Like, used to, you had to have something. You had to have either your mate fornicated, in other words, had sex with somebody that was not you, so you could file for adultery and get a divorce, abandonment, abuse. Now, 1969, California just totally did away with any fault at all. So it's not like you can sue for divorce anymore. And so that has really been difficult on our society. And the thing is, for some reason, the lawyers didn't pitch a fit. The judges did not pitch a fit. And they just, I don't know, it just went along. And so maybe you didn't even notice anything was going on really until the last 10 years when the homosexual community basically started responding to these magistrates around here and in other places who refused to be involved in same-sex marriage. They ended up throwing it up into the face of these magistrates. Look, the same book that you're using to say that you're not going to be involved with same-sex marriage, you're not going to be giving out license, the same book said that you're not supposed to be allowing individuals to divorce unless fornication is involved. And that community, the homosexual community, the broader homosexual community, they were right. Individuals should have been complaining and putting up a fuss and pushing back when no-fault divorce started passing all the states. But no, that's fine because, hey, all of these people are wanting divorces. They're wanting to change mates. Why are they wanting to change mates? Well, I thought we discussed that just a minute ago. Individuals meeting at happy hour all over the nation, people being inebriated, their inhibitors shut down, and you're talking about stuff that you don't have any business talking about with individuals that you don't have any business being alone with, and you're basically not conscious of what you're really doing a lot of the time. And what happens? Adulteries, fornications, those are the kinds of things that happen. And so what do you want to do about that? Well, you're at that hotel. Remember, we were at happy hour at the hotel with your airport, and you go to bed with this person, and you're just like, I'm madly in love with this person. I had no idea that this person, how this, this was going to work. Well, that is exactly right. You should not have any idea of any person other than your own mate. That's the whole danger of getting with somebody else. And especially if you are involved with things that take away your inhibitions and you act differently, and it's just so many difficult things can happen there. And then what do you want to do? You want to get a divorce? Well, you couldn't. You could sneak around or whatever before 1969, but if you got caught, your wife or your husband could sue for divorce, take you to court, and it basically worked. Now, you get custody of the kids, the whole bit. So, see what we're saying? Those individuals, those judges, those magistrates, they should have been pitching a fit back then, because now they're really looking foolish, because they're saying, well, we don't want to give out same-sex marriage license, as if that is worse than fornications and adulteries. They're all in the same category. Look at this. If you're talking about being a custodian of righteousness and helping the country, then basically look at this. But know you, this is 1 Corinthians 6:9. Know you not that the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of God, but be not deceived, neither fornicators, idolaters, adulterers, effeminate, abusers of themselves with mankind. Right there you have the exact same sins listed. Homosexuality is right there, and so is adultery, and so is fornication. Now, why is it that you're saying, I want to be a custodian for righteousness when it comes to homosexuality, but you didn't care when it had to do with adultery, fornication, and adultery, dissolution of marriages? So you see, as we allow these freedoms, these people to have what they want, as we whittle along and have these freedoms, we're also losing something. You see what we're doing? Now, we now have moved to a position where the schools are saying, well, now, this one really is bothersome to me, and it's bothersome from the standpoint of how this actually played out. They took, I'm just going to basically say it this way, they took the paddle out of school, and you can no longer discipline anyone in school, and so what do you do with the bully if you cannot discipline them? Well, you can send them home and expel them. But if their parents don't really care, then when they come back to school, I mean, one of the reasons the parents would care is because, they're having to put together daycare or whatever. And so one of the things that I'm actually very happy about right now is I am happy about the situation with the public school system. Because the public school system, if you do research, you can find that the schools are actually compared to prison psychology, prison yard psychology. Individuals, very few custodians, and I'm not talking about people in the cleaning business, I'm talking about the people in charge of the school, very few custodians compared to the number of students. And so the students really overwhelm the ability to watch them and keep up with their activity, and they do a lot of badgering and bullying and shaming kids in the school system, in the school buses, on the schoolyard, unless you have, one of the most traumatic things that I can think about in elementary school, or even up to junior high, up to my junior high years, the worst thing that I can think about happening in my school days was riding the school bus in rural Texas. There were some guys on that school bus that they just made it their life to they would put your arm behind your back, they'd pull your ears, they'd pull your hair, they would do anything they could to bug you, and it was every day. And so that's the kind of thing that was going on in the 60s. And so when you start talking about peer pressure and bullying and shaming and just flat out meanness, then you've got to have some way to deal with that. And so we lost that as we took away the ability for the school system to punish your children in a way that really is consequential. In other words, it hurt. And I have misbehaved in school a lot, and I had been paddled a lot, and I had a few teachers that convinced me that I didn't want to be doing what I was doing in their class because they really knew how to use a paddle. And the consequences were such that you just didn't want to be involved in that. Plus, I got in trouble when I got home as well. See, see how our nation has changed? You're not even, a lot of people believe that you're not even allowed in any kind of way to spank your children, and the social services will get involved, and they basically say that you're beating your children. And so as we stop acting in biblical principles with biblical principles, then we start having these other problems. And so you might be saying, now, how does this get to here, and what freedoms are you talking about? Well, for one thing, when we started having the homosexual movement and individuals became accepted and they started wanting to enter into all the different areas or arenas, which would be armed services, what did we end up having to do? We had to start making some kind of amends. First, it was don't ask, don't tell. And so you had to change things. First of all, you had women wanting to be in the military. I don't have any problem with women in the military, but I'm just saying, as you start making these changes, you have to start changing the environment as well. All right, so you've got women in the military. You have places for women to be in the military, not with the men, as far as bunking and things of that nature, billeting. And so then you start having homosexuals in the military, and now you end up having transgender. Now, I'm not saying there are transgender individuals that are being allowed in the military. I'm not sure about that, but I know that it's coming. I mean, we're basically at a point where this is a huge movement in the United States. And so what does that end up bringing about? Well, do you think about what happens when you put a transgender person in jail? You know that, I don't know if you know this or not, but there are women prisons and there are men prisons as far as Department of Correction. You don't have Department of Corrections unless I'm totally out of it, and I could be. But it used to be the case that you would have women's facilities, and I know it's still that way. You have a women's facility, and then you got men's facilities. Well, now, what are you going to do when you are faced with a person who actually is a male and is going through enhancements in order to become a female? So what do you do with that person? Well, I'm not trying to answer that question, but I'm simply saying these are the kinds of things that go along with these freedoms to identify and do these kinds of things. And then you start having state entities that legislate against the, let's read how this says, how the actual headline went. Arkansas transgender law makes it America's worst state for trans kids. And so what are we talking about when we're saying that? Health care. And I'm not up on it enough to know exactly what is taking place, but I know that many of these states are talking about this being a part of your health care. Your insurance provider will have to be involved and things of that nature. So this book is telling about young girls, particularly, that are being convinced that, you know what, I'm not happy in my gender. Now, y'all, I do get this from the standpoint of the school system. If you are getting unwanted harassment as a boy by other boys, and someone on the internet, and we were not having all this before the internet started, you just could not readily get the information. So you're having trouble at school. The school system will not help you because they can't handle these kids that are bullying, and they can't spank them. They can't give them any kind of punishment like that. Remove them from the classroom. I think it's counterproductive as far as the money goes, because children have to be in class a certain amount of time in a day in order for federal funds to come in. So you expel everybody, all the bullies and the bad kids, and you're not going to have your federal funding. So they're trying to figure out another way. And I'm saying, I get this. as far as the school system. I did not want my kids in the public school system because I remember how the public school system was. And I have read documentation that demonstrate that it's just like the psychology I said on a prison yard. You're basically turning your kids loose with other kids that have been trained in all kinds of different things and know all kinds of things that you don't want your children to know, and are allowed to behave in ways that you would never allow your children to behave. And so you basically have an environment that is extremely volatile and difficult, and these are formative years for these kids. And so then you have people like the California school system coming along and saying, you know what, we failed at bullying, so it is essential to prevent discrimination, harassment, and bullying. In order to protect gay and trans kids from harassment, in other words, it was necessary for all children to receive gender identity and sexual orientation instruction. Can I tell you something? That is not the answer to bullying and harassment. Now, but I am saying the bullying and the harassment is a very real phenomenon, and it is a very difficult thing when you do not have any forms of punishment. And so you have individuals like Chase here who coach your children on how the process works and the joy of getting outside of those problems, and then he ends up trying to convince you that there's no problem being a trans person. So listen, you know, the classic discussion that husbands and wives have where the husband says, you know, I wish that you could actually be a man for one day and go through the stuff that I go through, and then the wife says, I wish you could be a woman and you'd know the things that women have to go through. Hey, we all realize that there are difficulties in both spectrums, but is it really the answer to try to change your sexual identity? And is it really something that we want to start funding from the state level or in our health care plans and things of that nature? Because you see, these girls, they're actually having their girl parts cut off. And so that's irreversible. And you're, 11 years old or even younger? Now, I'm not saying that happens at 11 years old, but I'm saying the beginning of a lot of this in their mind starts in the early stages. And people talk to them. Your healthcare physicians like psychologists and psychiatrists, they're involved in this. And I'm going to go ahead a little bit and see how this guy talks.
Multiple times from the interview and said that me watching YouTube videos is what made me decide to be transgender. Come on. Anyways, so I don't want to make this about me at all. I know that Ty won't put his video down, and I get it because all of the information is there, and go watch that video. I'm just here to let you know that things between me and Ty are amicable. Like, we have come to an understanding and agreement. We are talking more about things and what's going on, and really the common enemy here is the book and the author. So yes, I am going to be taking legal measures because this book doesn't just affect me. Obviously, it's horrible, but I think that people in the community who have been affected by this book, who are in this book, should also join up into some type of legal matter because...
Okay, so folks, in older census, the numbers basically, let me just go to my slide presentation where I have some of this information. When I say that this business is really, it's a real phenomenon, and the reason why I'm talking about it tonight is because I want to remind you the individuals that are have the biggest platforms. And do you think any of these individuals are listening to Kenneth Copeland? You may have forgotten Kenneth Copeland, so I'm going to put him up here right quick and make sure that you are reminded of his activity. Let's see.
I'm getting laid off at work. Hey, your job's not your source. If it is, you're in trouble. Jesus is your source. Whatever you do right now, don't you stop tithing. Don't you stop sowing offerings. Well, they won't let us go to church. Well, email it in there, text and give or something, but you get your tithe in that church. If you have to go take it down there and drop it off and stick it under the door or something, you get that tithe in that church, you get that offering in that church, and then you go home and you do what we're supposed to do. Fear of this coronavirus is faith in its ability to hurt you or kill you.
Okay, y'all, this was last year about this time. And so all Kenneth Copeland and this crowd are concerned with is the same thing the government is concerned with, the money. And so I'm asking, can they help this? This trans woman sets herself on fire in another country in Europe as a result of just basically the treatment that people are getting that are in this community are not getting during the COVID-19 response. So we're talking about real people here. We're not making fun of anybody, and we're not making fun of this individual. We're talking about like something that is locally taking place right now. The police department or the sheriff's department having to make some kind of arrangement for a genderless or a mixed up gender. And this is just the beginning. When I said the census, let me look at right quick what some of my census notes are. This is from like a 10-year-old census. I think we just had census this year. We're going to have new numbers. But from the last census, 1 in every 250 adults, or almost 1 million Americans, are actually transgender. Now, y'all, that basically means that they're having to have health care. They're having different issues that we don't have, and special things have to be fixed for them. And what I'm talking about is each time that we make changes or we allow certain things to get going, then it affects us another way that most people don't pay attention to. This is a government website, by the way, and it is telling all of the difficulties that are associated with these changes, and we haven't even really, I think 2012, before 2012, there were hardly any girls that were involved in this young age dysphoria. And so, you know, it's like the uncomfortableness of being in your body, in your assigned body. And what did we go right back to? Did we not go right back to what we started with? This is why people are using marijuana, alcohol, is because they have a difficulty dealing with your body, your mind, the people that are around you, being social, being civil. And so what they do is they use a substance in order to make something better in their mind or make something go away. And so that has become our society. And as a result, our society is having to make all kinds of changes in laws. They're having to make all kinds of movements as other individuals try to make laws to counter. And it's just like a constant cycle that we're going to continue to go through. And what do you mean we're going to continue to go through? If we don't realize that somewhere in this, these folk are not helping us, and these folk right here are pretty much the bread and butter for the Republican Party. And you may be a Republican right now, and you might be saying, well, man, I can't stand Kenneth Copeland. It doesn't matter if you do or you don't like Kenneth Copeland. Kenneth Copeland is a part of a voting bloc that's called the religious right, and the Republicans cannot do without them. And so these individuals are not helping anything. All they're wanting you to do is get that tithe in. And so, you know, you may be sitting here tonight and watching this, and you're saying, I am really surprised with Johnny basically having any concern for individuals that are having these kinds of problems. Listen, folks, it's our business to be concerned about everybody, and it certainly is our business to be concerned about people that are local. And you might be saying, well, what do you do about this when a person has already gone this far? Well, when you've gone this far and you know, you find a person who has altered themselves, does that actually necessitate that they have to act on the alteration? On the alteration, no. Individuals that have made these changes, they may be irreversible. You know, there are people who have actually messed up their reproductive systems as a result of having an abortion. And there's just all kinds of things people do that follow them throughout their entire life. But here's the thing. You find them where they are, and we're saying that you do not have to act on what you've done to yourself. You may have lost some rights. Now, I don't think a lot of people like to hear things like that I've lost some rights. I don't have freedoms anymore. Do you not realize that people who are involved in felonies where a weapon is involved, that they lose their rights to have your Second Amendment rights? There are things that you do that have consequences. All of us do things that have consequences. There are people possibly that you have wronged in your lifetime, and it destroyed friendships. If you have gone through a divorce or whatever, you have involved your own children. If you had children, you have involved them in being a dysfunctional person. What does that mean? It means an individual who has way more relatives than other individuals have when it comes to mamas and daddies and grandparents and whatnot. When the marriage is dissolved and you marry somebody else and the other mate marries somebody else and they have living mamas and daddies themselves, you just multiplied the amount of relatives that your children had to be involved in. And children are not equipped for that. But parents, do they think about that? And I'm not telling people that they can't get a divorce if their mate is running around on them. But I am saying all of these things go together. We're basically talking about changing the laws on how to function, how to deal with this segment of society. We're talking about changing the laws regarding marijuana, introducing marijuana into our state legally. And all of those are factors that end up changing our family structure and things of that nature. And so, folks, we're saying these are all real issues and nobody is applying the Bible to it. So again, what did we end up saying that we started with? I started with divorce, no-fault divorce. When we removed that impediment, it was an impediment, it was a good impediment. And it's basically one that God put in place because, number one, he realizes that children that you covenanted with a mate to bring into the world and to care for, you broke that covenant, and hardly anybody says anything about that as far as the kids are concerned. So you broke that covenant, and then you changed the whole family environment pretty much by adding all of these different individuals in, like stepmoms, stepdads, those kinds of things, and those stepmoms and stepdads, mothers and daddies. So you've got grandparents that you didn't grow up around, you never met before, and now you got these step-grandparents, step-uncles. See how all that goes? And it's just, it is traumatizing in and of itself. Where did that come from? No-fault divorce. It just made divorce become rampant in America. Then we're basically saying, since the judges didn't say anything about that, when you start, you roll this thing 15 years ahead, and now you've got same-sex marriages, and you've got these individuals who try to say, well, we don't want to give out the license. Why? These individuals who are watching you are basically watching that you just were a hypocrite when it came to this one thing which you liked, which was being able to, how many of these judges and magistrates and whatnot do you think have married and divorced for no reason? Man, everybody you know is in their second marriage, just about. Everybody's doing it if they're even getting married. So now you've got this other segment of community, and they're basically being told they can't have their rights by these individuals who are not in any way practicing what God says. And the question is, where are all of the religious people? I'm saying, where are all the truth speakers, the individuals who are truly should be the custodians of the kingdom of heaven? They're not. These pastors, how many wives do you think pastors around here have? There are so many pastors that have swapped wives around here that it is just simply ridiculous. And then you're saying also, there is a huge portion of this community the LGBTQ community that are involved in entertainment. And so where do you think the pastors are getting their entertainers? Do you think they draw the line at somebody who has a sexual orientation that the Bible is opposed to? No, they don't. One of the reasons they don't is because those people have family members and they're not going to aggravate the family members. Number two, it's the case sometimes that particular try harder at entertainment. So you got some of your best performers that you would actually have to be off limits. It's just not gonna happen. So you see what we're doing? We're basically showing that we're just simply a country of compromisers. We continue to chisel away at things that we know we shouldn't be allowing. We know that we're losing control. We're seeing all of this arguing and difficulty in getting along, and it's multiplying. Now, this is really, y'all, you don't realize the new census that's going to be out. It's going to be horrendous as far as the numbers are concerned. We're going to be going up, particularly because women were very, I'm not saying neglected, they just were not, the numbers were not there on the side of women being transgender. But now with these individuals on YouTube, with your coaches, it has really changed in regard to that. People get on the internet and they're able to see, I lost Chase somewhere along the line here. They're able to see individuals like Chase, and he is really a coach. That's what his job is. And they are all over the internet. Not to mention the fact, if you think about this, when we start talking about the government allowing marijuana and the money that's going to be changing hands, the taxes, have you stopped to think who is benefiting, who is set to benefit when you turn all of these young girls into something else? Individuals start selling things to an audience that they didn't have before, and these guys are coaching them on how to find the things that they need or they want, or that they used to didn't have to use and now they have to. There are all kinds of people that are making money on this, and so I recommend this book. I don't know where you can get it, Irreversible Damage, and it is just basically putting you into awareness that the public school system, they have failed at stopping the bullies. They are basically changing the identities of individuals, and these individuals change their identity because of peer pressure, because of bullying and things of that nature. Now, y'all, also things like social media. Do you know when you're on social media and you're able to like take selfies, put your latest, I forget what Facebook is when you change your profile, it's what it is, profile picture, and these people changing their profile pictures all the time. And so you change your profile, you change your picture, and what happens instantly? Well, you start seeing likes or dislikes. And the way things are right now, the ability to communicate, and I'm saying real communication, people are very, very lonely. They're isolated. And when, some individuals spend all this time getting the perfect picture together and their likes go way up and you can never catch up to that, your features are not ever going to be the features of that other person. And then someone comes along and says, you know what? You don't even have to put up with that. Chase comes along and says, you don't even have to put up with that. You can actually just change all of those pressures and all of that difficulty that you have to deal with, psychological, the things that you hear, the horror stories going forward, being a woman and having to have a different set of rules put on you as far as looks. A guy can just look any kind of way, but the woman, she has to have a different appearance, and you basically hear, hey, you can look like me and have 10 million views on your YouTube, 160,000 people that are subscribed to your channel, and I'm saying this really literally is becoming epidemic. And what is the reasoning behind it? I believe the reasoning behind it really is that people absolutely do not know who they are. When you get down to it, this is basically one of the things that is extremely, I'd say, important in regard to this, is people have no idea what life is about. They have no idea what Jesus is really about, what the Bible is about, because these folk that are the Kenneth Copelands and individuals like that, they have completely ruined our ability to understand what the truth is. Look at this. John 17:1, these words spake Jesus, and lifted up his eyes to heaven, and said, Father, the hour is come, glorify thy Son, that thy Son also may glorify thee, as thou hast given him power over all flesh, that he should give eternal life to as many as thou hast given him. And this is eternal life, that they may know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom thou hast sent. None of these people actually are getting to know God, because the changes that have been made by people like Kenneth Copeland and all of our local pastors who didn't stand up against no-fault marriage, no-fault divorce, and are hypocrites as they stand up against same-sex marriage, and now the gender issues, they're making a mess of this, and the laws are starting to change, and it's just another arguing point that has come, into our arena, as if we didn't already have enough to argue about. And so, my thoughts tonight are, when we think about our police and our persons who are in charge of the horrendous decisions that have to be made, they really need our prayers. Our government needs to be prayed for. And so one of the things that I'm suggesting also is this issue is not at all something to make fun of. It is a very real phenomenon and is going to affect our young people. And I would say you need to start doing your due diligence and get your information together so you can make your own stand. So tonight we appreciate you being with us, and I want to get off of his YouTube and go to mine and just say the last word for our YouTube. If you're interested in these issues, we have several videos from back in, I would say, 10 years ago when we were following the Kinsey movie. You may have forgotten Alfred Kinsey. He wrote the book on male sexuality and then female sexuality. And they did a movie about him, and we had Ronald Reagan's Juvenile Justice Department head come on an interview, and we really get into a lot of this kind of stuff in that. So if you want to look on our YouTube and find some of that stuff, it'll help you. We're going to do some more of this research, continue on this research. And so locally, we appreciate you for watching us, and we always ask for, what does the Bible say? God bless you. Good night.